Well, good evening, everyone. We're going to give it just a minute or two to give folks a chance to log on. Then we'll get started. Leah, I'll be looking to you to let me know when you think it's leveled off and we're ready to go, okay?
Okay. Looks like it's leveled off.
Are we good?
Yeah, we're good.
Okay, hey, thanks everyone for being here. Before we get started, I think I'd like to just take a quick opportunity and do some introductions here on the WDFW side of the house. My name's Kelly Cunningham. I'm the director of the fish program, and I'll turn it over to Rob Allen.
All right, thanks, Kelly. Good evening, everybody. I'm Rob Allen. I'm the interim Region 6 Fish Program Manager for a couple more days. Jenny?
I'm Jenny Whitney. I'm the District 16 fish biologist for areas including the Hoe and Quileute systems. Mike.
Hello, I'm Mike Sharp. I'm the district fisheries biologist for Queets south to Grays Harbor. Aaron.
Hi, good evening. My name is Erin Whitcop, and I am the district biologist for the Willapa Bay area. Pass it over to Evan.
Hello, I'm Evan Boer. I'm the Freshwater Fisheries Policy Coordinator, working to provide oversight and coordination to our sport fish monitoring for Puget Sound and the coast. And I'll pass it to Colt.
Hi, I'm Colt Hawley. I work with Evan in the statewide salmon and steelhead unit as a research scientist. And who's left?
I think
Am I
that's
the last one.
I think you're the last one. Last but not least. So again, hey, thanks for being here, everybody. I want to express my appreciation for all of the work that goes into this coastal steelhead season planning process. It culminates here in the next couple of weeks, but the work starts really in the spring, and we got boots on the ground doing spawning ground surveys, and we're doing a whole bunch of math, and we're talking with co-managers, and it winds up being a pretty compressed timeline when all the things come together. So I just want to appreciate all of the hard work that goes into this, but not only do I want to appreciate staff for all of the work in this compressed timeline, but I want to thank all of you as well. The time you take to participate and attend these town hall meetings is very important, and the fact that many of you take the time to provide us with very thoughtful comments, either written or during our question and answer session in these town halls is greatly appreciated. We value it. We use that information, and again, just really, really appreciative of the participation. Before we dive into the material tonight, I'd like to just take a couple minutes and hit on a concern that has been raised by some of the commenters over the last couple weeks since the last town hall. So recall it at the first town hall, I mentioned that our town hall approach this year would be a bit different than it has been in the last 3 years or so. And that's based on feedback that we've heard from quite a few of you all. Historically, we've spent a whole bunch of time at the town hall meetings focusing on things like steelhead life history, ocean conditions, the statewide steelhead management plan, and the associated viable salmon and population parameters, or VSP. And we've done that in addition to talking about abundance and the forecasts and potential fisheries. The feedback that you all have provided us, primarily last year, we heard quite a bit of feedback to this end, but you all asked us to limit our time discussing some of the kind of educational materials, I'll call them, and really focusing in on the forecasts and the potential fisheries, and allowing a lot more time for you all to engage with us in terms of suggestions for fisheries or tweaks here and there, or just allowing more time for public engagement in terms of questions and answers. So at Town Hall 1, I addressed this, and I pointed folks to our Coastal Steelhead webpage, where all of the previous town hall materials over the last 4 years could be found. Some interpreted our approach this year as kind of the department moving away from our approach to steelhead management when it comes to very important factors such as steelhead diversity, spatial distribution, productivity, while only considering abundance and what might be possible for fisheries. So I just want to take a second here and assure everybody that that's not the case. These parameters remain at the forefront of our thinking and are represented in our proposals. Now, you know, we can argue about, you know, where we should weight things here and there. But again, I wanted to make sure folks understood that those same VSP parameters are still driving our deliberations and our conversations, at least internally and with our co-managers, about what fisheries we want to put forward. With that, I hope that clears up some of the concerns that folks had. And again, I understand that folks may be more concerned about things like spatial distribution or you know, diversity and things like that. But I didn't want folks to be left with a feeling like we were abandoning everything we've talked about and considered over the last few years. So with that, let's go to the next slide and talk about what we're going to be visiting about tonight, Aaron. So in terms of our agenda, here's what we have planned for our time together. First, we're going to review some of the material we covered last time in terms of how last year performed in terms of returns. We'll talk about this year's forecast, spend quite a bit of time on the sport impact limit for each system. We'll then review our initial thinking about potential fisheries again. This was presented at Townhall #1, but I think it's worthwhile just kind of talking about where we were here a couple weeks ago and how our thinking has evolved and how the conversations with co-managers have evolved. Next, we'll provide you an overview of what we've received in terms of public comment. And we're going to do this both kind of from that 30,000 foot level, and then we're going to boil it down at the watershed level and have each of the district biologists talk about what they've heard for their specific watersheds. And then finally, we'll open the floor where you all will have a chance to weigh in and ask questions. Next slide. So just in terms of a quick review here, I think it's important to kind of understand where we've been, where we are, and then where we're going. So here we are at Townhall number 2 on the 13th. I want to call your attention to the fact that we have a special fish committee meeting next Thursday, November 21st. The meeting starts at 10 a.m. And for those of you who are interested in tuning in, the login details can be found on the WDFW website on our commission page. The remainder of this month is going to be spent finalizing our management plans with the co-managers, and we intend to announce the regulations for the upcoming season during the last week in November. The other thing I'll point out is on December 12th, we have yet another fish committee meeting where we're going to be informing the commission about the regulations and answering any questions that they may have. And again, the details associated with that can be found on the commission webpage. I'll turn this next slide over to you, Leah, so you can walk us through our Zoom directions and etiquette.
Okay, and as most of you know, it's a pretty familiar slide for most. So all callers will be muted upon entry. Ask a question by raising your hand. If you're calling in, you can raise a hand by dialing *9 on your phone. Or if you're calling in from a computer, you can find the hand icon at the bottom of your screen. When you're called on for a question or comment, we encourage you to speak up and provide comments live. To speak, you'll need to unmute yourself by using the mute button on your computer or mobile device, or enter the *6 if you're calling from a landline. You can type additional questions in the chat. However, we may not be able to respond to all questions. A record of written questions will be made available to staff after the webinar. Please limit questions to 1 at a time. If you have technical issues during our webinar, please drop us a note in the chat and we'll help you through it. Be respectful of others. Be tough on the issues and questions, not on the people or organizations. No personal attacks, insults, or threats. Listen and assume positive intentions from those speaking. Speak and act professionally, no offensive, disrespectful, or derogatory language, including profanity. Assume positive intentions. Share questions or comments in written format online at wdfw.wa.gov/coastal-steelhead. Please limit questions to one at a time. There you go, Kelly.
Great, thanks, Leah. Next slide, coastwide summary, and I'll just say that the next couple slides are going to be review. They're slides that we went over last time we were together, but I thought it was worthwhile just to make sure that we had a grounding in again where we've been and where we're headed. So with that, if we go to the review of last year's run size, and I'm not going to go over this in great detail, other than to just say on the far left column of this table, you've got the river, the area, we've got the predicted run size. That's what we thought was going to come back last year. We've got the actual run size, the escapement goal, and then what the actual escapement was. And you can see that we made escapement in all systems with the exception of the Chehalis and the hump tulips, which fell a little bit short. Next slide, Leah. So in terms of this year's forecast, again, you can go left to right. You can see the system, the run to river, the escapement goal, the wild steelhead relative to the goal, either above or below, the percentage of the goal, and then what our sport impact limit is. And this is kind of what I want to focus on. So you can see that we're in a little better shape, meeting escapement everywhere with the exception of the hump tulips. And on the far right, again, these are the sport impacts or mortalities of wild steelhead that we can, maximum number that we can assume in any fisheries that we propose. Next slide. So in terms of potential fisheries, again, this is a slide that you saw last time, and I wanted you to be able to see it again. We'll be talking about any changes that have occurred since then, but I won't go through this in great detail. Again, this PowerPoint's on our presentation. You can take a peek at these, but we've got an updated table that we're going to walk you through here a little bit later on in the presentation. Next slide. So in terms of public comment summary, again, we're going to come at this from a 30,000-foot view, just kind of an umbrella slide that talks about, in general, what we heard from you all, and then we're going to dive down into the details a bit more. And I'll turn it over to Rob to walk us through that 30,000-foot level.
Okay, thanks, Kelly. Next slide, please. All right. So this is the really cool stuff. I mean, I have to tell you, a lot of people don't think that we actually look at what they send. And for the most part, we do. Last 3 years, I think there was hundreds of comments. I don't know that we got through all those, but this year, I want to tell you that myself and Kelly and Evan and each one of us have looked at the comments. And so this is our attempt here to just kind of summarize. So if you don't see your specific comment in here, you might want to look a little bit deeper at the bullet points, because I think you'll see that they're actually in there. And I apologize if we did miss a few, but this is, like Kelly said, the 30,000-foot level. If you look in the little box on the right there, you see total attendance. Just wanted to recap. Total attendance last town hall was about 133. Total comments during the town hall, or both in the chat and then spoken, was about 25. And then in the public portal that I hope you guys are all utilizing, there was about 30, but the last couple of days, this might be off a little bit. The last couple of days, we've been getting quite a few comments, and I have to tell you, they're really, really fun to look at, because and they can be real challenging, and we really appreciate them. We can't always address every one of them, but and if there are some specific questions, I really want you guys to reach out to the district bios for some specifics. So I'll go through these public comments, and again, this is like the 30,000-foot level, and the first kind of category is catch and effort. The first bullet there you'll see is target hatchery fish in time and area. And this was talked about a lot last couple of years. And then especially this year, we had a lot of positive feedback on it. There's there's some concerns about that early timed run that when most of the, I would say, segregated populations start to return. So that's the December fishery. We're not overlooking that December fish or December wild return, but we do want to target these hatchery fish. Then the next bullet, you see spreading out the effort by opening more areas. Yeah, we're always wanting to open more areas. It's a really good comment and a great concept. We heard a bunch of these in the last few weeks, especially compared to last season. Boat opportunity, a lot of controversy over this one. It's really good conversations from many constituents. What do we expand or restrict opportunities for fishing from a boat? What's interesting about this one is, as anybody that fished along the Pacific coast knows, that there's all these watersheds are a little bit different. You have the smaller Willapa system and the Nacelle, a little bit bigger system, but tributaries in the Chehalis. And as we work north, it gets completely different as far as boat access and then public access by foot. We want to continue to evaluate effects of the no fishing from a boat. That's where Evan comes into and some of Jenny's crew. We don't really have that one quite dialed in yet, but it's great for great discussion. Season length. It's all over the board on this one. Mixed support especially for April. One of the things we're concerned about in April is us and the co-managers are concerned about kelts. So there's a lot of discussion about that one. Gear restrictions. Many support using bait in December to increase hatchery catch and get at some of the pea house issues. But like I said, in the first couple bullets there, we are concerned about the early part of the wild return. And then methods and philosophy. This is kind of a catch-all, what Kelly kind of addressed earlier. We're not abandoning the statewide steelhead management plan guidelines and then the all-age approach. I think we all know what the all-age approach is, talking about habitat and hydro and harvest and hatcheries. I was going to leave that one out, especially as it relates to VSP. Then we want to continue our conservation. Oops, it blocks my view here. Sorry. We want to continue our conservation approach and manage for the long-term trends. That's what's so neat about everybody that's participating in these calls. We all realize the importance of looking long-term. Really appreciate that from everybody that we've heard from. And then my favorite, increased funding for monitoring and evaluation, harvest rates and encounter rates, mortality rates, fishing from a boat, especially as it relates to the viability of salmon populations, or specifically steelhead. So, all right. So that's kind of the 30,000 foot level. Now I'll turn it over to Dr. Aaron Whitcott.
Hey, thank you, Rob. So now we're getting into the part of the presentation where we wanted to go watershed by watershed and discuss the specific comments we received and kind of our thinking in response to those comments, and share that with you all for how we use these comments to shape the fisheries that we're proposing. So first, we got several comments regarding boat opportunity in the Willapa Bay. There was a mixed response, mixed support for continued use of fishing from a floating device. Some supported continuing fishing from a floating device, whereas others suggested restricting this, particularly on the Nacelle and Willapa rivers, mainly for reasons of conservation and limiting gear conflict. In particular, we received several comments about this in the last few days, with people advocating for not allowing fishing from a floating device. We'll say we do have some creel data from the last two seasons, 2022-23 and 23-24. And in one of those seasons, you could fish from a floating device, and in one season, you could not. So that gives us an interesting comparison group there for some data about the effects of fishing from a floating device. And interestingly, unlike a place like the Hoe, our creel program showed not very much difference actually in catch per unit effort between when fishing from a floating device was allowed versus not allowed. So, anglers are still successful boat angling, successful angling from the bank, changing how they're fishing when fishing from a floating device is allowed, not allowed, excuse me. But we don't think it's really addressing these conservation issues really in the Willapa and Nacelle. And so that kind of leads it to being more about a gear conflict issue. And part of our statewide steelhead management plan is it's important that we provide diverse fishing opportunities. And we feel at this time that the angler conflict here doesn't really rise to the level in the Willapa and Nacelle rivers where we would need to restrict fishing opportunity from a boat. But that's something we're going to keep monitoring in the future. Next, we also received some comments regarding our proposals about season length. So we had proposed to close the Nema, Palix, and Bear on March 1st rather than March 31st. And this regulation was in place last year. And there are also permanent rules already in place that have the North River, South Fork, Willapa, and Salmon Creek River already closing on March 1. So our proposed rule would have all of these tributaries closing on the same day. While we do agree that keeping a longer season here may spread out some effort, these rivers do not have hatchery programs and are predominantly wild steelhead rivers, and our red data shows that there is wild spawning occurring beginning in early March. So we think it is important to continue to protect these wild spawners and kelts in a system where there is very little hatchery harvest available, and to continue that conservative management approach we've used in years past here. And lastly, we received comments regarding gear restrictions. Again, this was mixed support for allowing bait in December. And some people supported allowing bait, particularly during that overlap time with coho. And other people expressed concerns that allowing bait in December would increase the impact on wild fish. So while maintaining diversity and productivity is a really critical part of our management, we believe, like Rob was saying, that getting more hatchery fish off the spawning grounds is very important for limiting genetic introgression, particularly here where PHOS is exceeding our 2% threshold. And we feel that protecting the overall genetic fitness of the population at this time outweighs the impact on the smaller percentage of wild fish that we would encounter during December. So with that, I'd like to pass it off to my colleague, Mike.
Thank you very much, Erin. You did a great job at covering a lot of this, so I don't have to. So I think my piece is going to be a little bit shorter. I want to start out a little bit with a refresher on the Queets escapement goal. We did hear some comments about getting together with the Quinaults and finalizing the escapement goal there with an agreement on what it should be. But as you're aware, we don't have an agreed to escapement goal, and we haven't for decades. And last year we came to you and said that we would initiate work to move forward in getting an escapement goal that we could agree to. So we did initiate the conversation with the Quinault tribe. And we've continued some great conversations leading to hopefully sometime in the near future, agreed to management objectives within the Queets River. And we've reached out to the Science Division for WDFW to ask for assistance to help us achieve and understand what management objectives we should be using in the Queets River. So at this time, we're not at a place where we have an agreement, but we are moving forward with trying to figure out what that should be. So what did we hear comments for in the Queets? Certainly, like Erin and Rob indicated, pros and cons to fishing from a boat and the use of or not use of bait were there. But kind of the keys that we heard was providing some opportunity where we can target some hatchery fish, particularly in the Salmon River, and provide opportunity in the clear water if we have impacts that will allow us to do so. So we're looking into those opportunities. And similarly, We heard the desire for opportunity in the upper Quinault River, given the forecast. And, you know, we had some further comments that if we do, can we run selective gear rules December through March? So we're looking at opportunities there. And similarly, you know, as we've heard everywhere, can we fish for a boat, or maybe we shouldn't fish for a boat? And the other thing that we heard, can we use savings from not fishing from a boat to extend some season lengths? And there are some caveats here in that if we extend seasons, are there abilities to monitor fishery extensions? So that's another question that we are dealing with. So dropping down into the Hump Tulips River, we heard that, you know, important to provide us hatchery targeted fisheries and through February, if possible, but also with the low forecast, we did hear comments that, you know, anything would be nice if we could get through January or mid-February. Those would be bonuses from the comments that we heard. And in the Chehalis, we heard a variety of comments. And again, like all of the systems, fish from a boat, no fishing from a boat, use of bait, no fishing from a bait. So I'm not going to dive into those. I think Aaron did a spectacular job at explaining those. But for in the Chehalis system specifically, what comments did we hear? Again, you know, it's something we hear every in all of these systems. Provide hatchery targeted fisheries through February would be great. We also heard some comments that, you know, maybe can we extend those opportunities into March if we have the available impacts. And we also heard several comments that, you know, can we extend some of the opportunity in the mainstem Chehalis based on the forecasted abundance? You know, we didn't include that in the original proposal, partly because we weren't sure if we had the resources to adequately monitor that area. But we're certainly digging into things and moving forward there. And, you know, can we provide some opportunity in March if we use some of those saving impacts from not fishing from a boat? Was also a comment that we heard. So as Rob said, these were just kind of some of the major comments and topics that we heard. We tried to condense them down into some quick summary. But as Rob pointed out, there were a lot of comments that we heard from the first meeting, and we're still receiving comments. So with that said, a little bit later on, we all get to jump into kind of where have we moved since the first meeting based on our comments and conversations with our co-managers. But now I'm going to transfer this over to Jennifer Whitney so she can talk about some of the comments heard in the North Coast rivers.
Thank you, Mike. Yeah, I think that we received quite a few comments about the North Coast rivers, or the Hoh and the Quileute. I think overall there was a general agreement that it was important to look at the long-term health of coastal steelhead populations, more important to do that than to provide short-term opportunity. I think we were overall encouraged to do that. And again, a lot of encouragement for the agency to look at all the VSP parameters beyond abundance, as Kelly discussed. For boat opportunity, we received a lot of mixed responses. Many people really wanted that expanded boat opportunity where that was possible, citing concerns with especially older anglers getting in and out of boat, younger anglers getting in and out of boats. There was also a lot of concern stated for higher CPUE from fishing from a boat. So the no fishing from a boat study, we discussed that as well. I think that overall the responses were that they would like to see it. People would like to see another year of the no fishing from a boat study, but to maybe pair it with a year where we had lower forecasts of abundance than this year. And where we landed with that is we're not going to conduct a no fishing from a boat study on the Hoh River this year. We would like to do it we plan to do it in a future year. In the Ho this year, we're proposing fishing from a boat be open from Morgan's Crossing down to the park boundary near the mouth. And in the Quileute, we're proposing leaving the fishing from a boat boundaries where they were last year. Open below the hatchery ramp on the Solduck, below 101 on the Kalawa, and below Mill Creek on the Bogashil. And then regarding season length, there was a lot of mixed responses to that as well. In restoring April seasons to the Ho and Quileute, many anglers wanted to see April seasons restored if abundance allowed, and others were very concerned about fishing during peak spawn timing and about encounters negatively impacting kelp survival. There were some considerations specific to the Solduck, which included looking at the possibility of April spring Chinook fishing, but there were also strong concerns stated with the Solduck as a wild steelhead gene bank and it warranting sort of an extra higher level of care. We are proposing for the Ho and Quileute leaving the April seasons as to be determined in season. We need to have further discussions with co-managers and so to be determined for April. For gear restrictions, there was concern with allowing bait in the lower Kalawa and Bogashil and that hatchery zone there, but many people also very excited about sort of increased catchability of hatchery steelhead with using bait. The main concern was the increased impacts on that early end of the wild run and people stressing the importance of the early end of the run to genetic diversity and the long-term health of steelhead populations. We are proposing moving forward with allowing bait in December in the lower Bogashil below Mill Creek and in the lower Kalawa about a half mile above the North Hatchery Pond down. And so that's sort of where we landed with those seasons. Yeah, thank you.
So thanks all. So that's what we've heard in terms of feedback. Again, here's kind of our revised thinking based on some of that feedback. And again, we'll go system by system and we'll start with Aaron. Go ahead, Aaron.
Okay, thanks. Yeah, so looks pretty similar to what we proposed in our first meeting. Willapa River and Asal River proposing allowing bait there in December, and then in January switching to selective gear rolls with single point barbless hook, and closing on April 1st, so the last open day, March 31st. And then in the Willapa Bay tributaries without hatchery programs, we're proposing selective gear rolls throughout the whole season and closing on March 1st. Pass it off to Mike.
Thank you, and let's stay with the south-north chronological order here, and start with the Chehalis Basin. As you remember, the original proposal was opportunity for in hatchery production systems like Wishkah, Wainuchi, Satsep, and Skookumchuck. This proposal was based on the importance of fisheries, understanding where people like to fish, the ability to monitor and objectives of this statewide steelhead management plan. Based on our conversations with co-managers, comments that we received, evaluations of our monitoring resources and conservation objectives, we feel that we can provide some opportunities in the Wainuchi, Satsep, Skookumchuck, and shift effort into the mainstem Chehalis. And in doing so, we probably wouldn't be able to open the Wishkah, but it sounded like we had more interest in the mainstem Chehalis than the Wishkah. And I will point out that of the forecasted return of hatchery fish, about 2,500 of those fish are destined to the upper Chehalis Basin, so above the Skookumchuck. So with that said, as you see on the screen there, we're proposing to have those open through February. You know, it would be nice to be able to extend some of those fishery opportunities into March, but we are limited in what we can do, and we don't have the resources to monitor a 4-month fishery in the Chehalis Basin. So that's kind of where we're sitting right now. And so now moving into the hump tulips, the original proposal was open up from Highway 101 bridge down through the month of February. As we had discussions with co-managers and reviewing comments and kind of really considering the forecasted abundance there. We feel that it was important to maybe match what the quinolts were thinking about, and that was an earlier closure than what we originally proposed. So we talked about closing the end of January. I kind of looked at the calendar and saw that was actually on a Friday. So as you see here, I'm proposing to move forward with a closure date of February 3rd, which would give the fishery one more weekend in which to fish. So justifications for that change, good conversations with co-managers, and we don't have a robust forecast there. So as we move up the coast, there's a lot of TBDs here to be determined. I'm going to kind of start with the upper Quinault and maybe tie in the Clearwater in this quick discussion, in that what I would like to do in both of these systems is very similar. Not sure that I would like to open in December. Currently, there are no salmon fisheries that occur in December in both of those systems. And with some time constraints, I'm not sure we could get all our ducks in a row to provide some opportunity in December. But could we provide opportunity in January, February, and March, kind of matching some of the other systems that have March 31st closures, and give an opportunity to provide opportunity to spread the effort out a little bit more. So we've had some pretty good discussions with the quinolts. And I'll be frank, the mention of monitoring is pretty important. And as we sit right now, that we don't have the resources to do any monitoring there. We hope to come up with something so that we can move forward there. But that's where we sit, and we're stuck with to be determined in those two systems. I think for the Salmon River, we have hatchery opportunity there. My goal there is to provide opportunity through the month of February. And so not sure that piece is going to be as critical in terms of monitoring, in that it's predominantly a hatchery targeted fishery. So hopefully we can move forward with figuring out exactly what we can do in these two systems as we continue our conversations with our co-managers. And with that, I will hand this over to Jennifer.
Thanks, Mike. In the Hoh River, the changes from last year are that fishing from a boat will be allowed below Morgan's Crossing, whereas last year we had those alternating days of the week in the middle and lower section for the no fishing from a boat study. And in the Quileute system, the change from where we were last year is that we have the December bait allowed in the lower Bogachiel and Kalawa. And I believe this is what we presented in the last slide, with the exception of the fishing from a boat allowed below Morgan's Crossing. I'm sorry, in the slide presented at Town Hall number 1.
Okay. Thanks, everybody. So here's your opportunity to provide us any feedback you have or questions that you may have with respect to the forecasts or the fisheries we're talking about. And I'll ask Leah to help us monitor the hands raised.
So looks like our first hand is from Rob. Rob, go ahead.
First, I'd like to say thanks to everybody for all that you've done. This has been kind of a tough 3 years and a lot of opportunity that we haven't had. And I know there's been a great deal of effort that's gone in from countless people to put forth what you have this year, and I want to say thank you. I do want to point out that even though there's a lot of people on both sides of the bait situation, we did get the mortality rates based on samples in bait fisheries, and we have conservative numbers there. So I think that we should be, we're being pretty conservative even with the allowance of bait. And I do think that it's very helpful in fishing for those coho and trying to reach PHOS numbers and keep things down. So I am in favor of bait. I also would encourage the department to continue to move forward. Kelly, you've done a good job. I know Mark Balsell helped get money. We've been pushing for a while, but it appears that there's some additional opportunities that we could have if we could get additional funding. And I want to encourage us to move forward with those. We'll do what we can to help you get support for that. And I also think that there may be data available to allow us to conduct limited fisheries, and being quite conservative. I realize we have to get the co-manager to agree, but I'm sure there's catch card data and past history that could allow us to have at least some limited fisheries in like the Upper Quinault and some other areas. And again, I just want to thank you for the opportunity to voice my opinions. Appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks, Rob. Appreciate those comments. And then if you're not aware, we've got a package that we submitted to OFM here earlier this fall. It's our coastal salmonid monitoring package, and we're hoping that it gets some traction both in the governor's budget and gets picked up by the legislature. So it's a long road to hoe. It's our second attempt in as many years to try to convince the legislature with respect to the need. So I appreciate you calling that out. Thank you.
We'll do what we
Thanks,
can
Rob.
to help them.
Our next hand is from Patrick. Patrick, go ahead.
Hi, can you hear me okay?
Yeah, we got you.
All right. Thank you very much for the hard work. I'm just would like to know what, or if there has been a discussion on what the creeling will look like on the Chehalis Basin this year. Both tribes, how confident are we that we can execute this fishery with being within our guidelines? And then one idea I would like to bring up just to make a little more transparency is possibly start a web page on the department site, kind of like how we do ocean and saltwater creeling, and kind of give an update on if we have the data, give an update week to week on how much, I guess you could call it quota, but the impacts that we're using per week, just so in the event of an early closure, if we can't complete this full season, that there's a little more transparency to the public, and it's not a huge surprise if we run into a situation that we have to close early.
Yeah, thanks, Patrick. Mike, I'll tap you to talk about our creel and our monitoring.
Yeah, we do have 7 people that are already on staff, ready to go. And we basically have the program set up. So I'm very confident that we will have the coverage needed to monitor what's going on out there. Otherwise, I don't think we would be able to put together the package that we're proposing at this point in time.
Okay. Can you speak to that last part that I commented on, Mike?
That's probably not going to be in my hands, whether or not we can post things. That's
So what I can say is, Mike, Patrick, what I can say is I think we can always do a better job communicating. So what I would say is message received. We don't want to surprise people. I mean, we do enough of that in Puget Sound, you know, given the, you know, the way we're required to monitor those fisheries, and we'll do what we can to make sure we're minimize any surprises.
Perfect. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Patrick. Our next hand is from Andy. Andy, go ahead.
Yeah, hi, good evening. First, I got a question here, and it's because my signal was cutting out a little bit, and it's about the monitoring. So you guys are saying that there isn't enough funding to continue monitoring on the Chehalis tributaries, specifically the Satsip and the Wainuchi, beyond March 1st, and that's because of funding?
That is correct.
So my question in regards to that then, if the like Queets and Quinault fisheries do not happen, is there funding that can be moved that direction to continue those fisheries beyond the first?
No.
No. Okay. Well, then a follow-up on that, what do we need to do to get you guys more funding on that? Like, who do we need to talk to, write letters to, or what do we need to do to facilitate that?
Yeah, thanks. And as I mentioned, when I was talking to Patrick or responding to Patrick, for the last couple years, well, it's been longer than that, but we've had formal packages targeted, legislative packages targeted at the coast. Now, we've got a lot of ESA listings around the state, salmon and steelhead. We don't have currently any listings on the coast, and therefore all of the legislative attention and resources that the agency has received in terms of monitoring have been directed at other places like the Columbia River, like Puget Sound. So we've been really struggling with resources out on the coast to monitor fisheries. And again, we've got a package. It's the same, virtually the same package that we put in front of the legislature last year, currently with OFM being considered for the governor's budget, which is, I think, going to come out here first part of December. So within the next 3 or 4 weeks. What you can do if you're supportive is contact your local legislator, express your support for the package, and stay tuned in to the legislature during session. You know, if it comes up for a hearing in front of one of the natural resources committees, you can share your thoughts at that time.
I guess this is something that just occurred to me as you were going there. If that isn't something that gets pushed through, would it be possible to offer a license additional stamp where funding is directly funneled, like a coastal steelhead stamp, where that money goes directly towards monitoring?
Yeah, I mean, it's possible. Again, that would require a legislative change. We don't have that in the mix this session. It's something that we've talked about in these forums over the last few years. Is it possible? Yes. It's not something that is going to be in front of the legislature this session.
Okay, so the regulations, like even those kind of regulations, aren't done on a departmental level. Those are done on a legislative level.
Yeah, if we're talking about stamps, if you think back to the Columbia River salmon and steelhead endorsement, that was approved by the legislature back in like 2009, and then discontinued here. Gosh, I think it was like in 2018. Those are legislatively required.
Okay.
So if we're talking about increasing costs of licenses or creating additional stamps, things like that require legislative approval and authorities.
Okay. Well, thank you for that. And actually, the main thing I was calling or raising my hand for, and this is specifically towards the Willapa Bay tributaries. I had a conversation with Aaron where she said one of the things you guys were considering, as far as boat regulations are concerned, is a fishing from a boat allowed below hatchery facilities, and then no fishing from a boat above hatchery facilities. And to me, that seemed like a pretty good compromise, where it still gives people that desire to fish from a boat those opportunities. Whereas giving those, those other areas for the wild fish. And my concern about that is, these are small rivers, and there are areas that you can only get to by boat. And then there are areas within those areas that you literally cannot make any kind of presentation in unless you have a boat, unless, you want to kind of risk life and limb. So I don't think that as anglers, like catch and release on these fish is really impacting the fish numbers. But I know there's been studies, at least on other anadromous fish, that the more a fish is encountered and handled, the lower their spawning success gets. So in these smaller rivers, I'd like to see those areas, and it kind of naturally gives it to them by having those no bait regulations, or not no bait, no fishing from a boat regulations, where they have those unharassed areas where they can sit and recuperate. Because on these little rivers, those fish get up into these places and they just sit there until they're ready to go. And then that would let them have those areas to rest, recuperate, and then continue to spawn, while still providing all of us with the opportunities to fish for them. And it's great that I see you guys are continuing that in the Talawa and the Bogachil and the Ho, having those upper areas without boat restrictions. I'd really like to see that on these smaller rivers, because those are bigger rivers that on an individual river level are averaging larger numbers of fish. So I'd really like to see that kind of a compromise put into place.
Yeah, thanks, Andy. Appreciate it. Appreciate that feedback. Aaron, any response?
Yeah, thanks for bringing that up, Andy. Yeah, that is a public comment we've received a couple of times, particularly during salmon seasons as well. Especially on the Nacelle River, for restricting fishing from a boat above the hatchery. Yeah, still we're keeping it in mind. Still, where we've landed right now is that we don't think the conservation concern is there, and the angler conflict rises to the level to make that restriction yet. But it's something on our radar, and I think it's going to be an ongoing conversation. So
Okay.
thanks.
I guess then why is it not a conservation concern on those rivers, but it is a conservation concern on these other rivers up near Forks?
Oh, I'll try to be brief. I mean, the data we have for creel, as I mentioned, for the 2 years we have creel. Obviously, we need more creel monitoring data. That's something that we're trying to get funding for in this funding package to do more creel monitoring. But a place like the Ho is a very different situation than the Nacelle and the Willapa rivers. And we're just not, the data we have right now is showing that catch per unit effort on wild fish is not significantly changed when you can't fish out of your floating device. So that's where that's the data that I'm referencing, but I know there's plenty of other studies that we can do.
As far as the monitoring goes, when I've gone up and fished in the Forks area, I get creel surveyed 100% or nearly 100% of the time. When I'm fishing down here at home, I might see a surveyor a quarter or less of the time. And I know they're doing their job. They're all over the place, but I think there's a lot more data being collected in those rivers. And I also don't see what the downside of giving the fish these refuges would be. Because we're still providing opportunity.
Hey, Andy, I'm going to suggest that you and Aaron connect offline and talk through this. We got a lot of folks to get through. I don't mean to cut you off, but
sure.
Good questions. I appreciate the questions, but want to keep us moving along. So
thank you.
Thanks, Andy.
Okay, thanks, Andy. Our next hand is from Wes. Wes, go ahead.
Good evening, Wes Hopler with the Steelhead Trout Club of Washington. Nice job tonight. Thanks for the opportunities. Thanks for hearing us on mobility issues, for getting in and out of boats and boat access. And pleased with the approach on the Queets escapement goal. Would prioritize analytic efforts on that endeavor this cycle. I didn't really see it discussed, and I might have missed it last time, but do I understand, Jenny, that there was a significant fall off in angler hours last season as opposed to the prior season that didn't have boat restrictions on the hoe?
I think we are in the process of looking more in depth at the no fishing from a boat study results. The CPUE results for effort fishing from a boat are across the board higher when fishing from a boat than they are when fishing from the bank. We have not yet really dug in deep enough to be able to include the effort in that. So how many hours do anglers fish? And so I guess stay tuned for more details on that.
Okay.
Wes, unless Evan wants to add anything to that. No, okay.
And then for Mike, you're saying at the moment there is not enforcement resources to serve the Clearwater and Upper Quinault, but you think they might be found?
So I was referring to the monitoring of the fishery via kind of creel surveys, not enforcement. There's certainly enforcement.
Oh, I'm sorry. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Yep. Sorry.
But you know, as we've moved forward, that resource has never been available. And as of the last 2 years, we've received some funds to do things in the Chehalis Basin and the Hump Tulips, and we're certainly always looking for ways and to get more of that resource so that we can provide some of these opportunities and actually evaluate them. So at this point in time, those currently are not available, but we're turning over the couch cushions and seeing what we can find.
Okay. And then while you don't know exactly what it is, can you just help me get my mind wrapped around it? Is this like a 10,000, 100,000, or $1 million kind of a thing?
It's not going to be a great expense, but you know,
You got to find it.
Yeah, we have set budgets,
Yep.
and this has never been part of a set budget, so it's asking the legislature for more money, and Kelly can tell you that that's not the easiest task, and it doesn't happen quickly. So.
Yep. Thank you.
I mean, that said, you know, we say couch cushion, and that's really what we're talking about, right? We're trying to squeeze everything we can out of existing budgets to try to see if we've got some additional resources that we can bring to bear out on the coast. So that's kind of the exercise we're engaged in right now.
Okay.
Thank you, Wes. Our next hand is from Gabe. Gabe, go ahead.
Yeah, thanks. I appreciate all the hard work everybody put into this. You know, regardless of the outcome, it looks like it's going to be a heck of a lot better than it has been the last couple of years, and we appreciate that. And it's good stuff. I'm really hoping the department can squeeze extra hard on the couch cushions out there and for the Queets and the Clearwater. It'd be nice to get some sort of fishery, even if it's really limited. We need to get back on the water out there, and you know, I kind of to Rob Larson's point, I'm sure there's some historical data we could use to, you know, set a baseline or, you know, create some sort of estimate of what the effort and catch is going to be, and if we could have even just a little bit of monitoring just to verify that, and hopefully that we can get buy-in from the co-managers on that. Also, as far as bait, you know, with these fisheries being conservative, especially in Chehalis system due to constraints on monitoring, I really hope we can get as much opportunity with bait as possible when those hatchery fish are in there, especially in those hatchery tribs. I think the benefits to reducing PHOS outweigh the, any, negative effects that we would have on wild fish by increased catch rate. I just don't want to see those programs go the way of the Tokel Creek program or other programs we've had to eliminate because PHOS got too high. And then also just one last thing, I support the department trying to go after more funds from the legislature to increase sampling and monitoring, and anything that we can do as a sport fishing community or the sport fishing industry, please let us know. We want to help with that and make sure we have the tools to properly monitor these fisheries and make sure we're doing the right thing for the fish and getting as much angler time as possible. Thanks.
Thanks, Gabe.
Thank you. Our next hand is from Steven. Steven, go ahead.
Hey guys, can you hear me?
Yeah, we got you.
Hey, so I just wanted to thank all you guys first off. It's been a long road. I've taken part of pretty much every town hall you guys have held, and I know there's been a lot of frustration on everybody's side, and it's just nice to finally see something finally kind of shake out in our favor. Anyway, I just wanted to thank you guys. I also wanted to thank you guys because I've seen more fish counters on the Chehalis this year than I think I've ever seen. So that's been nice, just knowing that extra data is getting in there. And then moving forward, I just wanted to talk really quick. I've brought this up to you guys, and I know that the budget's always something that's challenging, but I think that we could really do ourselves a favor by just installing some sonar to monitor up there in Adna, where we're worried about these late fish, these wild, or worried about these winter steelhead rather. I think we could really just let that thing sit there and count for us. We're not worried about it being a mixed stock like we are with our salmon runs, so we don't need to do like a tangle net sort, so it doesn't require a bunch of hands on deck. It's just a fancy fish finder that records every fish that goes by. I think that would really help, and I know that everything costs money, but it would be nice to see some funds allocated towards that. And then the other thing that I wanted to bring up was, before the closure, the Grays Harbor Guide Association, which I was part of, we were doing a broodstock program on the Sats up, and we were just about to see, I think, the first year of the returning fish from that. And my question is that something that we would be able to resume either this year or in the future? Is that something that you guys have that you're looking at as far as like broodstock programs for these systems, or is there a way that we're able to help you guys moving forward, donate our time, money, and also like building we could build the sonar infrastructure to set in the river for you guys, whatever you guys need. We're here to help you guys. I just don't know where that line begins and ends, where we can and can't help you guys.
So I can address the brood stocking. All of the steelhead programs within the Chehalis Basin are integrated programs. So we incorporate wild fish into the hatchery brood. And for years, we did use private fishermen to help us collect those wild fish needed to provide that genetic input. It got to a point where it was actually being abused. So what we had to do is discontinue the use of private fishermen and rely on agency staff to go out and do that. That broodstock program that you're talking to is just part of an integrated program that's been going on for decades in the Chehalis Basin.
Okay, copy that. Yeah, I was just curious about that. Wasn't sure where that ended up, and just was curious. It more or less just want to help any way that I can, and just not sure, just not sure how to do that. So just wanted to kind of bring that up to you guys, maybe bring up some aspects or find some ways that we can help you guys reach our goal of just getting a lot more fish back. But other than that, go ahead.
We did really appreciate the work that a lot of the fishermen did. Unfortunately, a couple of bad eggs kind of put that on a kibosh, but the program is still in place. So it's the same program. It's just being done by agency staff.
Okay.
So
Is Joel, do you know if Joel's still up there?
yes, he is.
Okay, cool. Right
Yeah.
on, right on. All right, awesome. Well, thank you
Hey,
guys.
Steven, appreciate it. Let's keep talking.
All right, awesome. Well, thank you guys. All right, awesome. Appreciate it, guys.
Thank you, Stephen. Our next hand is from Ryan. Ryan, go ahead.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yeah, we got
Hello?
you.
Okay. Yeah, first
We can
off,
hear
I'd like
you.
to say
Go ahead,
thank you guys
Brian.
for all your work. You guys have done an awesome job of, doing your best with what you've got to work with. And I have a couple of questions and a couple of insights myself. For one, I would like to know exactly what you guys are planning on doing with the Queets and the Quinault and the Clearwater drainage. Last year it was not open, and it was above escapement. So what's your guys' strategy with that this year?
Well, as we presented earlier, it is kind of still in the to be decided, but we would like to be able to provide opportunity in the Queets and the upper Quinault River January through March with maybe some gear restrictions imposed. We are looking to move forward with the Salmon River where we have hatchery production. We do have a small piece of that river that's managed by the WDFW, and it would blend in well with what the Quinault plan is moving forward. So the issue we have is lack of monitoring funding currently to open up basically a wild targeted catch and release fishery. And it's pretty important, and there are means in which we could come up with some impact analysis, which we've done. But without on the ground information, we've got a co-manager in these two basins, and we have to work with them. So to be decided as we move forward in our discussions with the Quinaults, but the goal and hoping we can get January, February, and March in those systems.
Yeah, that would be ideal. So as far as co-management goes, I know there was an issue last season, or at least from what I heard, there was an issue last season with you guys coming to an agreement with the co-managers. How has that conversation been going?
So we've had a couple of meetings, both policy level and technical level, and there's definitely a positive vibe that we're getting. So I think as positive as I was last year, I'm much more positive this year that we'll get something available in the Chehalis, Hump Tulips basins, and crossing fingers at what we can do in the Queets Quinault.
Gotcha. Okay, and overall, so it seems to me from a management perspective, and I'm a fishing guide. I'm not a professional management guy, but it seems to me that across the board, it seems to be kind of a like a responsive, active management perspective versus a retroactive versus a proactive, if that makes any sense. So what are you guys doing going forward?
I'm not sure I fully understand the question, Ryan. I mean, we're looking at the past while we look to the future, and thinking about the present when we're as we're managing these fisheries. So there's a little bit of everything going on. We can't predict what's going to happen next year. We got a forecast for this year that we're looking at, and we're thinking about that forecast in terms of, you know, how fisheries and returns have performed in the past, and trying to model some fisheries and propose some fisheries that again meet those VSP parameters we talked about earlier, or address those VSP parameters, but still provide some opportunity for folks. So maybe that's about the best I can do. And I'm looking at the clock, and I'm looking at a number of hands still up. So maybe we can move on to Robert and Ryan. If you've got additional questions or want to chat, feel free to reach out to any one of us.
I definitely appreciate you guys' time. Thank you very much. Keep in mind that driving in the rear view is like driving in the rear view. So have fun, guys. Good luck.
Thank you.
Thanks, Ryan. Our next hand is from Bob. Bob, go ahead.
Can you hear me all right?
Yeah, we hear you.
All right, great. You know, I grew up fishing back east in the Atlantic, Northeast, and you know, where there's, you know, Atlantic and landlocked salmon fishing, and it's done differently than out here. And I didn't know if you guys had looked into that at all. You could still fish, for example, for Atlantics in eastern Canada, and there they have a system that during the spring everybody's fishing with guides, and typically staying at the cabins there and supporting the local economy. And then in the summer, it's a little bit more like they do in Europe, where basically landowners have access to the fish. And if you want to fish in any of those areas, you better make friends with the landowners. And especially since a question was asked last time about why should a landowner need a fishing guide, you know, and I kind of, that question kind of got me a little bit, because it's like, shouldn't the locals have some preference? I mean, you know, they're the ones that live there, and they have the, you know, maybe the most stewardship sense for those areas. And for that reason, is there a possibility to give them a little preference? That's all. Yeah.
Yeah, thanks, Robert. We're tasked to manage fisheries on behalf of all citizens of the state. So we don't provide preference for landowners or any other entity for that matter. We try to create fair and equal opportunity across the board to the best of our ability. So appreciate the question. Thank you.
But I mean, the concern is fishing
Thanks,
down the
Bob.
regions. Oh. Am I able to still talk? Because my concern was about fishing down the regions, and
Yeah,
yeah,
we can still hear you.
yeah, because I mean, like I said, the locals have a little more stewardship sense, perhaps. And as you know, like Puget Sound stocks, you know, are dropping and everything else, and people are going farther to fish, it seems like it is fishing down the regions. And I just wanted to express that concern. That's all. Yeah.
Thanks, Robert. Appreciate that perspective.
Okay.
Thanks, Bob. Our next hand is from Larry. Larry, go ahead.
Yeah, thanks, guys. So in addition to these comments, we'll be submitting a written comments to both the department and the commission. But someone asked a few minutes, Larry Phillips, American Sport Fishing Association. Someone asked a few minutes ago about an opportunity to advocate for the agency's budget. Well, in addition to when the legislature is going to take this up, now is the time to reach out to the governor's office and OFM to provide your thoughts on the agency's request. And no time has been more important than right now. The coastal submoded management is included in that package, and that would significantly improve the capacity of the agency to manage primarily our steelhead fisheries. So jump on that if you can. So I know we all know this, but there's no larger bigger sector of the fishing community that's seen more restrictions than steelhead anglers, and there's likely no more folks with more emotional management recommendations than our steelhead anglers as well. So my recommendation is to use a standardized approach based on the guidance provided in the statewide steelhead management plan. I know you're proposing to do that, but from my perspective, the proposals that you're presented tonight don't do that. For the Chehalis and specifically, I propose implementing a one regulation for the entire drainage with a season that runs until March 31st. This is very consistent with a statewide steelhead management plan that doesn't disproportionately impact either tributaries or run timing by front loading a fishery and not spreading out the impact mortalities over the entire return. The recommendation to use bait in December, and I mean, it doesn't really address the hatchery program address hatchery fish because hatchery fish it's an integrated program. Hatchery fish are not going to be coming back until the peak is likely in February, even into March for the hatchery program. So I'm not really sure what, other than maybe some some coho, that seems somewhat inconsistent. But our share for the non-tribal share for the recreational portion is 484 fish, which equates to under a 10% mortality rate, which is extremely conservative, 4,840 encounters. And just for perspective, in 2003 and 2004, you guys, Mike Scharf and team, estimated the mortalities, natural origin mortalities, total mortalities for the season at 270 fish. And that was on a run size that was 19,000 wild fish, which was the largest return since 1982. The second highest was in 03 and 04, since 03 and 04 was 131. And those were run sizes that were much larger than we're going to see this year. So my point is that our likelihood of encountering that many fish during a full season is very, very low. And we don't want to lose sight of the fact that the Chehalis system is very flashy, and in any given year, I don't know off the top of my head as an avid angler in the system, we're likely to see about at least a third to a half of the season be unfishable because of environmental conditions. I'm still unsure where monitoring was a condition of the fishery, but I know that the atmosphere that we work in co-management and the uncertainty of our fisheries requires the investment in monitoring. But I would hope Kelly and Mike and others that given the conservative nature of this fishery, the likelihood of not realizing the 484, and not that we would propose even coming near that number, but this is a very conservative approach to providing recreational fishing opportunity. And I anticipate that this would result in potentially half or less of that number being actual mortalities. The other one I want to just briefly mention is Willapa. And I'm struggling to understand. I think the argument was made that because we don't have hatchery fish, that we would close the tributaries earlier than the main stem. Again, this is inconsistent with the statewide steelhead management plan, the guidance provided to us to spread out mortalities over the entire system, and during temporal and spatial distribution. So I would ask that the agency consider spreading out all of our effort over the largest area possible and over the largest time possible. And I think it's going to be very consistent with meeting our conservation objectives. But I appreciate the opportunity and look forward to seeing where this goes. Thank you.
Thanks, Larry. Our next hand is from Garrett. Garrett, go ahead.
All right, can you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you.
All right. Thank y'all for all your hard work this year, and previous years for that matter. Really excited for the possibility of getting back on the Chehalis system. Anytime that we get in there, it'll be very valuable the month of January and February for targeting hatchery fish. One comment I wanted to make on the Chehalis system specifically is regarding the Skookumchuck. That hatchery run does come in later than a lot of the other rivers in the basin. If there's any way that we can tweak a season into mid-March, specifically on the Skookumchuck, even if it's just from the hatchery downriver, say 2 or 3 miles, a lot of the locals up there always kind of have always said, start fishing around Valentine's Day. Yeah, there is fish in there in January, but specifically the later half of February, first half of March is traditionally been when a lot of those hatchery fish return in there. So yeah, that's all I got for now. Thank you guys for all your hard work.
Thank you, Garrett. Our next hand is from Matt. Matt, go ahead.
Thank you. And appreciate all the work that you guys have done over the last handful of years. I guess ultimately, given the ongoing challenges with accurately monitoring steelhead populations and the limitations associated with current visual and manual counting methods, can the board explain why in-river sonar technology has not been implemented more widely to support steelhead populations assessments?
Money.
Well, okay. I appreciate everything costs money. So I guess ultimately,
I mean, I'm not trying to be a jerk here. We spent a lot of time talking about the very limited resources we have out on the coast, which is represented by a handful of staff that are, busting their tails throughout the course of the season. We are in desperate need of additional resources to effectively monitor these fisheries. So again, Matt, not trying to be a jerk here, just it's a fact. We'd love to implement things like sonar and other state-of-the-art technologies and methodologies, have more boots on the ground. We are just resource limited.
And I guess asking the question, that's what I figured we were going to say. Over the last 10 years, our budget has increased, right, as an organization. So part of that
not on the coast. Not on the coast. So when we get money from the legislature, it's typically in the form of a proviso. And that means you get this money provided you do these things with that money. And to this point, we have not received any dollars that are dedicated to the coast. And we are not in a position when this money is proviso to decide how it's used. We are told by the legislature and directed by the legislature how those resources are to be used.
Yeah, no, and I completely agree with all that. And I understand how all of this works. But I mean, it is a fact that technically over the last 10 years, operating costs have increased, right? Budget spending. Sure. So, but with that being said, I mean, myself, I love to fish. I imagine everyone on this line loves to fish. A lot of us do have a lot of money, right? I already pay a lot of money in taxes. So if resources are the problem, why not go to some independent organizations like if you said, hey, Matt, here's a fund, start building out some stuff. We need this because we're going to put this sonar on the Quileute system and we're going to test it with a case study and see how it works. I imagine most anglers here would be willing to put $5, $5,000, $50,000, whether you're a large organization, if we are willing to do that. So it sounds like we need legislator to really be the ones telling you guys to do that then, right?
Yeah, I mean, I'm not, my phone's not ringing off the hook with people trying to give the agency, thousands of dollars at a time. But well, I mean, if there were an effort, and We received some resources in the term in donation funding. We put them to work as we do with other resources.
Yeah. And of course, and so then my question is like, how would I know that my $5,000 went directly to this specific case study, this money not going towards something in Puget Sound or someone's salary or something? So like, if we were to do this, I think us anglers would want to say, okay, you need $50,000, let us get to work, right? A lot of us make a lot of money, right? And at that point in time, we want the money to go directly to this. And then how do we keep your organization responsible in this partnership? Because we don't want to see $5,000 going somewhere else, right? So with that being said, if it's money, maybe, let's figure out how to get it. I mean, if that's all it is resources and money, there's plenty of it to go around in the angling community, right? Well, I
Thank
appreciate
you, Matt. Thank you, Matt. We're gonna keep on moving on. We have quite a few hands left. Our next hand is Rich. Rich, go ahead.
Hi, this is Rich. Everybody can hear me?
Yeah, we got you.
Okay, great. Hey, again, always the great opportunity to be able to make comment and welcome these conversations. I guess the way I'm looking at it is we have an uptick of some good news as far as where we were at compared to, 3, 4, 5 years ago. And we're kind of crawling out of the hole a little bit here. And I think we need to kind of celebrate that there has been some success. And I think some of the things that we have done have contributed to that success. That being said, I guess I'm a little disappointed to see us getting a little bit more aggressive suddenly and not kind of staying the course a little bit more and still providing, being conservative about it, but still providing opportunities. I really think that, I'm really concerned that, the December bait fishing across the board and the April fisheries and Queets and Quinault fisheries with no monitoring are kind of signs of a long-term strategy slipping compared to where we were at. So again, I'd like to understand what influenced your decision to remove the boat study on the hoe this year. I don't know if you have a response to that. I'm curious what made you decide to forego that for this time being.
Yeah, thanks, Rich. I'll speak for myself, and I guess what I would say, and I'd invite Evan to weigh in on this as well. I think the boat study is valuable. I think we've got 1 year of good data that gives us something to kind of look at and think about and point to. I would say that it was never the intention for the department to engage in a study at the kind of expense of available opportunity. So that's what we were really struggling with. We talked about it in our first town hall. That said, there's no reason we can't continue this study in future years, and we're actually intending to do so. But for me, it's this: hey, last year was kind of the perfect time to engage in something like that. We had some numbers that would support it. And this year we've got numbers that allow us to be a little less conservative with our fisheries. And we've made the policy decision to lean in that direction rather than a consecutive year of the no fishing from a floating device study. And I'll let Evan weigh in on kind of the technical aspect and his perspective. Evan?
Yeah, sure thing. I mean, one thing that's, I think, just a bit kind of frustrating is there's this kind of lag between putting out or kind of proposing to do a study and then the demand for those results, kind of like on a certain timeline. And with this case, what we don't have is really like a finished study that lets us get the insights we need to know whether or not that was ultimately a really valuable exercise to go through. So I know that's not like a super satisfying answer, but we don't have an answer to the primary question, which is at the end of the day, do we have a difference in total catch between those days with the rule in place and the rule not in place? And so with that in mind, I think we were a bit hesitant to kind of double down on the study for year 2 without kind of a better understanding of the kind of the ultimate value of going through that. So yeah, that's probably not the most satisfying answer, but that's kind of a reality of where we're at with the demand for that result, and then where we're at in the scientific process to get there.
So again, we looked at this as being a tool to help reduce impacts.
Yep.
Especially when we're having fisheries where things are a little bit, the numbers aren't quite there. There's some of these other things. So I guess, the way I look at it is, okay, we're talking about what are we going to do on the Queets, Clearwater, Upper Quinault, these types of things, right? I mean, it seems like we do have data with that that tells us which or how much impact these types of fisheries have, that if you were going to open it up, you should consider some of those tools. Okay. That would be part of my recommendation. And I guess the other thing, if you're going to forego limiting some of the impacts by such a regulation, that we have the fisheries closed in April, because our impacts are going to be higher on some of the rivers, especially on the Hoe. So again, you can look at it like, okay, if you limit the impacts, you can potentially have a longer season. If you go to like an all-out fishery, anything goes, then you're going to have a shorter season, because all our fisheries are based on impacts anymore. And as soon as people can really kind of get their heads wrapped around that, our fisheries are based on impacts. And what we do, you can either have a longer fishery with high impacts in a short period of time, or you could have a long fishery and and have limitations to reduce the impacts. It's just a philosophical thing of what people want, right? But so that's just kind of my input on it. I was just curious too, are we going to continue the test fisheries then?
I'll pass that one back to Jenny. But I agree with everything you said, Rich. And I think agree that we want to find the right tools to be responsive and adaptive in how we manage. And so on the boat study piece, I think we want to feel like it's a tool that's useful for us. And so we'll be when we get to those results, we'll be sharing those and we'll be communicating those. So I'll pass it back to Jenny now. But thanks.
Okay, Rich, I also just wanted to highlight that we will be creeling on the Hoe, and so we will be monitoring the number of steelhead encounters throughout the season. And so I think we have a higher degree of confidence on a river like the Hoe that we can stay within the boundaries because we have such an excellent monitoring program there. There is going to be a test fisher on the Hoe again. There's actually going to be 2 test fishers on the Hoe again this year. That is the plan anyway. So yes.
So Jenny, so if the encounter rates are high, are you guys proposing that you would shut down the system earlier if the encounter rates are too high?
We do not anticipate that they're going to be higher than the 944 share on the Hoe. That would be encountering every fish probably almost twice or more than twice. I think it's a fairly good year. Forecast wise, I know there's uncertainty with forecasting. We way under forecast last year. I do hear, I think your point being that when you have to weigh all the costs of a fishery and you decide between things like April and boats, how do you want those decisions to go. And those are the kind of things that we weigh in these discussions. I think I also want to make sure that I point out that so we've had technical discussions with tribal co-managers, but we haven't yet moved forward, we don't have signed management plans. There's still some discussions to go before everything is, sort of put in place and final. But I think having a creel in place does give us a higher degree of comfort with how we run our fisheries.
Yeah, I know you probably have a lot more people that have some comments that they want to make, so I'll kind of forego that time. I appreciate the input and the information and that sort of thing. Like I said, we've been able to scrape up. Things are looking better. Now's not the time just to, really start going back to, I think it's important to stay the course of being conservative and still trying to figure out how we manage our fisheries and stuff.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
anyway, I'll just leave it at that.
Thanks, Rich. Always appreciate your perspective and your thoughtful comments. I'm looking at the clock here. We got just under 25 minutes and we've got 11 hands up. So we're going to get through the next 11. I'd ask you to try to limit your questions to one. And then just know that you can reach out to any of us anytime. Kind of after the fact, and we're happy to visit more about this. So we're going to go to Patrick, and then we're going to wrap things up with Hal here, and kind of talk about next steps. So go ahead, Patrick.
Hey, thanks. I just wanted to add to my previous time. My personal opinion would be to be very careful on the Chehalis system. I would propose, with basin wide, backing everything down to about the 15th of February personally. And as much as I want as much opportunity as possible, I think we need to look at creating a boundary line from the mouth of the Skookumchuck upriver to give those fish a little more protection. And I did not look as far as the hump tulips. Is that including the West Fork? Is that going to be open in these regulations, or are we talking main stem only of the hump tulips?
So the proposal is Highway 101 downstream. Everything else upstream closed, and if we move into the main stem Chehalis, it would be from the Skookumchuck confluence downstream only.
Okay, perfect. Thank you. I was concerned about that.
Okay, thanks, Patrick. Our next hand is from Nevin. Nevin, go ahead.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah, we can hear you.
Okay, I'd like to thank you, Kelly, and your staff for the good work that you do. Two real quick questions. Number one, in the revised fishery for the hump tulips, there's abbreviation SGS, which I don't see anywhere else. Could you explain what that SGS means?
This is maybe the most. I'll take it real quick. It's SGR scientific. Oh, whoops. That should have been
SGR means selective gear rules, right? But what's SGS?
That's a typo. Sorry, did not see that. And then the SPBH, trying to compress everything into a small area, that's single point barbless hook.
Yeah, right. I just didn't understand what SGS was. Okay.
That's supposed to be SGR.
Yeah. Okay. Second question, real quick. Has the department thought about recruiting and training volunteers for a creel census? I think some states and various places, I know I was a creel census person. You're talking about resources being limited. There are a lot of retired people who like to fish, but who would also like to volunteer. So I'd like to have you think about that. Thank you very much for your help. Good night.
Thanks, Nevin.
Thank you, Nevin. Our next hand is from Ty. Ty, go ahead.
Thanks, guys. Again, appreciate all the efforts, all the presentation. The liberalization of opportunities is greatly appreciated. I'd like to echo Larry Phillips' comments and his extensive knowledge, considering he used to be Region 6 manager. My only question I have is it possible that an in-season monitoring tool is already in place when the tribes are fishing? And I understand that that information is somewhat sensitive, but I don't know if there's a better in-season monitoring tool ahead of the sport fishery than that.
So I can kind of talk about the Chehalis Basin. Certainly, there is a little more consistent long-term data set in that, but there's still variability within each season, number of days fished versus the amount of effort that occurs. One thing we've noticed in the last couple of years is the effort in commercial fisheries is not like it used to be. So at this point in time, there has been no agreement between the co-managers in Grace Harbor Basin or even in the Queets-Quinault to utilize something like that to do an in-season adjustment to the run size. There's a lot of variation and variables that go into it, and it comes down to, do we have enough data in hand during this in-season time to overrule what the data that we had when we did the forecasting?
Sure, thanks. I appreciate that. The only other thing I would hope maybe the department could throw together some numbers for sonar to give some of these folks an idea of just, I think the idea that they think sonar is so simple, for someone who's worked on sonar projects in Alaska, it's extremely expensive and it's a lot of work to implement and needs to be monitored daily. And with the flow changes we have would make it extremely difficult, not to mention species apportionment with coho in the mix. Anyways, thanks again, guys.
Thank you, Ty. Our next hand is from Reve. Reve, go ahead.
Thanks so much. Can you hear me? I just want to thank everyone and the previous commenters and the team. Really appreciate the increased opportunity, and thank you guys all for your work. I just want to kind of get some more details on how the decision to open the Ho and the Quileute in April will come down. Like, what specifically will be considered in that decision?
Maybe I'll take an initial stab, and Jenny, you can weigh in. So as Jenny mentioned, we're talking to co-managers. Think we're landing in the spots you see here. But with regard to the April fisheries, I remain pretty concerned about kelts and the protection of kelts. So that's something we're thinking about pretty hard, Reve, when it comes to those April fisheries. Maybe I'll just leave it at that. It's one of those parameters that we're thinking about pretty closely and thinking long and hard about it.
It'd be different if our co-managers weren't also fishing in April, I think.
Yeah, we're focused on our fisheries and our sport impacts, and that's just kind of how we roll in these, as you well know. We're not weighing in on the tribal fisheries. We're focused on our fisheries, Reve. Jenny, anything you want to add?
No, I just wanted to say that we are still having conversations with co-managers about issues like that. And, I think in past years they have closed for periods of time. So, that will be up to them, but those discussions are still happening.
Thank you.
Thank you, Reve. Our next hand is from Max. Max, go ahead.
I just had a couple quick comments to make. Just to point out, I just want to point out I'm also super in favor of sonar, and if we could come up with numbers or rivers that we think it'd be best to have on first, and then try to come up with numbers for that, and then have the public fund that, that'd be awesome. We live in literally one of the richest places of the world. I think we can figure out a few $100,000 to put into it, regardless of river flows. Most of these fish are coming in and later in the season and spawning then. The other comment I had to make is kind of more splitting hairs, but it's, let's say I caught 1% of the run size on the hoe and I wasn't interviewed one time last year. So trying to count these by hand is literally impossible to do. So it'd be awesome to try to get sonar implemented and try to figure out what funding is necessary to do that. And so that's my biggest comment here is just, it'd be great to do that. I know it's not perfect, but it's a lot better than what we have. So yeah.
Thank you, Max. Our next hand is from Jacob. Jacob, go ahead.
Hey guys, I just wanted to thank all the staff putting this together. I know you guys work really hard and do the most wading through the muddy waters of fisheries science to try to deliver us seasons, but also responsibly manage the resource we all hold together. I feel like we've been moving in the right direction for a few years now, especially this year. I think part of the optimism is definitely around some of the numbers we're seeing, but I think this format of the town hall and really engaging with the anglers has led to some really good conversations, and we're considering ideas that will help further adaptively manage steelhead. I just wanted to throw this out there that 10 years ago, the state decided that we would stop harvesting wild steelhead. I think there's been people talking about the past and the future, and they're on each side of, how aggressive or not aggressive we fish for steelhead. I think that's just something important that we should keep in mind. I'd like to echo the comments on harvesting the hatchery fish in Grace Harbor River, specifically this Satsip, Wainuchi, and Skookumchuck. I think we should try to get there. It would really be nice to try to get there in March on the Skookumchuck. If we need to shift our impacts around, I think that would be a really good idea. Like others, I am weary of a main stem Chehalis fishery. I guess it was cleared up that would be below the mouth of the Skookumchuck, but if we could get the terminal area open on the Skookumchuck, maybe even sections of the other larger hatchery rivers in Grace Harbor open, just taking the H's out of the systems really is going to help the wild fish. The PHOS and PNI is just, it's high there, and hatchery fish are expensive, and we haven't been fishing for them. The local economy will really benefit. People who turn shuttles on the Wainuchi, they'll benefit from a season there. On the Willapa Bay trips, I know that we're not looking at March because a lot of the fisheries are on spawning grounds. I would say maybe there's a couple of other tributaries down there that are bigger, very hard to access. There's distinct, maybe moving areas of the river versus spawning grounds. And outside of the pamphlet rules currently, maybe there could be some opportunity there. I second the steelhead stamp idea. There was also other ideas thrown out for funding. It's definitely time for us to fund our own steelhead research, and I'm encouraged by the amount of people that have thrown that out there. And I think we should definitely look into those different avenues, as unorthodox as they are, to the department at this time. Next year, I was wondering if it was possible if we could maybe do a full rundown on the findings of the boat study in the Hoe, and maybe especially maybe focusing on private anglers versus guides. I think there's some interesting data there that maybe we should be diving into. Another note I have down here is maybe thinking about mandatory hatchery retention and consider a 3-fish limit. I know there's you keep fishing for the additional fish. What are your impacts? I understand that's something that might need to be modeled, or we might not want to go there, but Region 5 has done mandatory hatchery retention and 3-fish limit on a lot of their hatchery systems. And again, I think that would be beneficial for the wild population. I also, like others, am concerned about maybe the idea of fishing in April. I think perhaps it's very hard to parse these details out as we're kind of trying to understand fish. Laying off the April fish, I think maybe that's why we are seeing some really positive results on some areas of the coast. We know that the fish that kelt, they when they repeat spawn, they are more fecunded. They are a larger percentage of the effective population size. I think really laying off those fish has been a good idea, and it sounds like we are, being cautious about that, but I definitely would keep that in mind. In a similar token, but a little bit different, I know there's people concerned about the early wild fish being encountered during these hatchery fisheries, especially if we were using bait. I think using bait as the department is proposing would be very important for harvesting excess hatchery fish that are making it onto our spawning grounds everywhere. Taking those H's out are important. Those are fish we pay for to put in the rivers through our taxes and our license fees. The mortality on bait is higher, which is why we don't use it, but that is based on hooking location. If we read studies about bait use, due to the low early wild encounters, I see the bait as totally on the table, and we should be utilizing that to harvest the excess hatchery fish. And I just had a couple more things I was going to slip in here.
Hey, Jacob, we're running out of time and I got a bunch more people. Could you do me a favor and maybe, it feels like you got this stuff maybe written down.
I do.
Could you send that to us? It'd be helpful. And I don't mean to cut you off, but I want to make sure we get to the remaining hands that are up before we close things down tonight. I really appreciate the thought you put into this.
I totally hear you, and I'll turn it over to whoever's next.
Thank you, Jacob. Appreciate it.
Thanks, Jacob. Our next hand is Steve. Steve, go ahead. Hey, Steve, I have prompted you to unmute.
Can you unmute him? Yes, do it himself.
Yeah.
What's he need to do? *6.
There should be something that pops up on your screens, Steve, since I sent the prompt over. That should ask you to unmute. If you're on a phone, you might need to type in *6.
Maybe while Steve's getting squared away, we can go down to Ryan Davey.
Ryan, go ahead. Ryan, can you unmute?
Hey.
There you are.
There you go. I thought it was us for a second. Go ahead, Ryan.
Well, I sure the hell ain't Ryan Davey. Jesus. I don't know how that came up, but I'll tell you what, I'm a steelhead guide on the Queets for several years, and I'll make this short and brief, but the nets, they're not stopping those fish. I mean, they're cruising into the river. I mean, there's a lot of, like, Sunday through Wednesday typically were the net days on that river, and like I said, I've been fishing it for several years, and I mean, the amount of fish that come up during those net days is absolutely amazing. I mean, you sit there in some runs and like in that lower four of the river, I mean, you'll see dozens of fish coming in. So they're not doing their job. I mean, if that you're using the nets as, to determine escapement, just want to say, I don't think those queetsers are doing a good job down there. So that's all I got to say. All right.
Thank you. Our next hand, Steve, have you guys managed to unmute yet? Doesn't sound like it. Okay, we'll go down to Hal. Hal,
Hear me now.
Hey, Steve, I don't know what happened, but we had a really bad echo from you. If you're listening to the meeting on 2 devices, that might be the problem. You might wanna, might mute or turn the volume down on one of them.
Let's go to Hal and we'll give Steve another chance to get squared away.
Go ahead, Hal.
Are you there, Hal?
It looks like you're unmuted, but we can't hear you. Hal, if you're talking, we can't hear you. It looks like you're unmuted though.
Let's go back to Steve, see if he's ready to roll.
Steve, go ahead.
Are we there now?
Yeah, we can hear you.
I'm clear.
Okay, sorry, I did have 2 devices, my bad. Hey, first of all, just thanks to everyone for the time you put in, and that bait ban going to the first of the year is going to be really appreciated. So thanks for everyone working on that. And also, I think it was Andy that commented about not fishing from a boat below hatcheries. Would really support that on the nacelle. And Kelly, hopefully we can, and you and Aaron, and we can talk about that here in a few days. So anyway, appreciate the work all you've done, and sorry for the technical problems.
Yeah, thanks, Steve. Yeah, it's on my calendar. Looking forward to the conversation.
Great.
Okay, now let's try to go back to Hal. Hal, can you unmute? Maybe we can hear you this time. We still can't hear you. You must be having some technical difficulties on your end. It looks like you are unmuted though.
Hal, if you can hear us, please reach out here to any one of us with your comments. Appreciate you participating. It's good to see you in here again. So thanks a lot for being here. Let's go to Jacob.
Go ahead, Jacob.
Hey, thanks for circling back. Just had a few last things to touch on. The Upper Quinault, it looks like we might not get there for a season, but I'm wondering if maybe no fishing from a boat. I know this has been a debate this year and last year, and probably will always be, but just as a conservative measure, if creeling options were not a thing, also, can we look at alternative creeling options? I understand that using, collecting the data and having the data be good is of the utmost importance. I do not want to diminish that, but super remote area, maybe it's something to look into. Or can we maybe go with a really conservative season and just kind of wing it? We've had the numbers there for a few years, but no fishing. I understand there are nuances to making and crafting fisheries on the Q rivers. I think, I'll more or less leave it at that. But then also, how much, I have a question sort of, and then also comment, like how much of these conversations is Sam Brankman a part of, the biologist for the park? And could he be more included in some of these conversations, as he also crafts regulations for part of the Olympic Peninsula as it pertains to Steelhead? And then a final little comment, will we have, or I guess question, will we have a signed, finalized fishery document with the Quinault Indian Nation? And what will that look like on their end?
Well, maybe I'll take an initial stab at the last question. I mean, that's our goal. That's our hope. We're in conversations right now with regard to our respective fisheries. So we always strive for a signed management plan. We hope we get there this year. I don't feel like there's any indications at this point that we won't. But we're still having those conversations, so more to come on that front. And Jenny, I'll pass the torch over to you to let you talk about the park and the Q Rivers.
Okay, I think that we do work fairly closely with the park on seasons. But I think that is a really good point, Jacob, that, these fish don't know, our boundaries of where the park is and where the park's not. And I think it is essential to coordinate closely with Olympic Park staff on fisheries.
Thanks, Jenny.
Yeah, that was good. Yeah, just if that's something that maybe he would even be interested in, or just further coordination. I know there are some differences in some regulations, and maybe that could be beneficial or not. But and then also there is some hatchery fish that also are within the park boundaries at times, and focusing on removing those, and just if that's on the park's radar, even though we are really concerned about wild steelhead in some of these areas. That would be my last couple of comments about that. And I just want to thank all of you guys for giving us all the time to share our thoughts and feelings about everything steelhead, and thank you for managing them.
Yeah, thanks, Jacob. Hey, I'm looking at the clock. It's 8:01 and we got one hand left. And Gabe, you're going to have the last word before we close things down.
Thanks. I'll make it quick. With all the challenges that we're facing with having funding for monitoring, I would hope the department could possibly look at developing a VTR system like we're using in Puget Sound, where anglers could, go online and fill out a voluntary trip report. It's probably not the gold standard in, the creel sampling would be, but at least we could have some sort of data to inform estimates for these fisheries. So I'll leave it at that. Thank you.
Great. Thanks, Gabe. And then, before we close things out, just want to let folks know that we have two of our commissioners who have been here since the beginning of the meeting. We've got the chair of the Fish Committee, Commissioner Anderson, as well as Vice Chair of the Commission, Commissioner Reagan. So in addition to us hearing all of your feedback and your questions, you've got two of our highest level policy folks participating tonight. With that, just want to remind folks, we looked at this slide at the beginning of the meeting. Just want to review it just one more time. So again, we're closing out this November 13th Town Hall. Next Thursday, we're going to be in front of the Fish Committee, providing the entire committee an update on what we've heard from you and how we're thinking about moving forward in the process. We're then going to be finalizing management plans with the co-managers. End of November, we're hopeful that we're going to be able to announce our winter fishing rules. And then again, on this December 12th, we'll have a kind of a final Fish Committee meeting to kind of close out this year's season planning process. So again, just want to appreciate everybody for your participation and engagement, the comments that you've provided us both in writing, in the portal, and tonight. Couldn't be more appreciative of that. It's super helpful to us, and we're grateful. With that, I hope everybody has a great night and a good weekend, upcoming weekend. Take care of yourselves, take care of each other, and we'll talk soon, okay? Take care. Thank you.